Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA podcast after a cracking weekend of hurling provincial finals. Barry Kelly and Shane McGrath are with myself and Rory to look back on it all, and it just feels, Shane, like how much can hurling give us in terms of drama, whether it's about the quality or whatever of the Munster Hurling Championship, which I feel has been questioned this year. For it to have started with 2 draws and ended with such epic drama on Saturday night, it really feels like this gift that hurling has just given us has been outrageous this year.
I was doing the commentary on the game, Jacqui, and I was actually wreck tired by the end of it.
I was
You
listening.
weren't the only one.
So, and I was tired, like mentally, I suppose, when you're trying to call a game for people that maybe can't see it or are listening. And Pádraig Lodge the same, Dalo was there with me, and like there was just an energy about the place that, you know, if you weren't there, it's very hard to describe to someone these occasions if you weren't there, about the energy and the buzz. And I was in there early as well. I actually parked a bike up over near Castle, or parked a car up over near Castle, cycled across the city then. It's a grand handy cycle. And just the buzz coming down along the Ennis Road, seeing the green, seeing the red, and you know, it's often kind of pictures you might associate maybe with people going to Champions League final or something like that, but it was unreal, and it'll never get old for me. And actually met Graham Mulcahy before the match and just asked him, you know, do you miss it now today? And he said, look, of course you do, like. And he just, like, he said, I'm sure the same for you. I said it was, you know, he's still playing club. He actually reffed the primary game match at half time, Graham Mulcahy. It was brilliant to see. But when you see the bus coming down and the blue flashing lights, it's some buzz. You can't replace it as a player. Very hard to say to a player, Jacqui, until they step away from it, how much they'll appreciate it. So all that. And then I suppose we got the game to match it. We got the excitement of the game. And I don't want to be a buzzkill here. We probably didn't get the quality of hurling that we normally associate with Limerick and Cork. There was an awful lot of mistakes in the game, whether that was anxiousness, whether that was the atmosphere, wind and all these things. Wind was a massive factor. Even if you look at the city end terrace, if you look at all the wides, Jacqui, most of them were to the right-hand side of the goal because the wind was just catching it and bringing it across. So if you weren't pure in your strike, that breeze was catching it. And even if you look at Conor Lehan's point in extra time, he pured that strike. The wind didn't take it left or right. But if you didn't, the wind was catching it and it was a factor. So with all those things, excitement, atmosphere, the way it finished, it's not for everybody. We'll probably talk about that. The referee, the management coming into the referee. I don't agree with the management's coming into the referee. I think that's something that we need to look at to say, don't think that should be happening. I don't think it's fair on the referee that that's happening at half time. Although they were incensed, we understand. The individual displays, all these things, like you just couldn't make it up. You could be here for the day talking about all the individual things, but I suppose the few things for me that I would look at would be Darragh Fitzgibbon to stand up and hit that 65 into the Limerick terrace, and, you know, after maybe, you know, hitting a big free before it to get to 65, and then going up, missing his penalty and cramping up, and, you know, these kind of things. And just the individual displays then for Cork all around the field. I thought Shamie Harnedy was absolutely immense. I just looked down at the crowd there one stage, Jacqui, and I just seen Kieran Kingston, Shane Kingston's dad, as you all know, a former Cork manager, and I'm sure he was just so happy for Cork, but probably more for his son Shane, like, because let's face it, there was often times there where he wasn't picking his own son to play on the team. And she's like, as a dad myself, she would go home to herself and say, I know he scored 6 or 7 points, but we're probably not going to start him the next day. And I'm sure for him, that personal satisfaction, Jacqui, him, Shane coming on, scoring 3 points, scoring a penalty. Conor Lehan, who has been much maligned by a lot of Cork people down through the years, coming on, scoring 2 points. And, you know, the 2 boys put themselves up to take penalties. So I suppose I was delighted for them lads, because they're there a while now. I would have hurled against them lads as well. And Shamie Harnedy and these guys, Hoggy with the tracksuit on because you can't give any more. It was a brilliant occasion. It was brilliant to be there. And, like, I don't know what more we can say about it, Jacqui. You were probably burned from talking about it as well over the weekend, and everyone. But look, it'll be very interesting to hear Barry's take on the referee thing. And just look, Barry, before you jump in with the referee thing, right? I just want to say as a player, okay, that I know the players have great respect for the ref, for Thomas Walsh, or Tyler Walsh now, as everyone knows his nickname after the weekend. But like he is very good to players, and the way he speaks to them, it's been heard. He calls them by the first name. And you were the same, Barry. Like we all respected you because you kind of would always call us by our first name, and you often call me now as well. But you know, you even knew the nicknames of some of the players, Barry, like which we found hilarious. But you had a personal loss in your life, Barry, and I suppose like the amount of intercounty players that went to that, Barry, I suppose that shows the respect I had for you. And I just wanted to say that, like, because you did it well with the way you refed it. I mean that. And I think Tyler Walsh is a really good ref. This is what I'm trying to get at here. I just think nowadays we nearly are saying to refs, you have to let it flow and you have to let it flow. And it's that fine line between you having to let it flow and blowing for frees. And if, I think I'm fairly right in this. Aaron Gillan didn't score a free. I think there was 52 or 53 minutes gone in the game. And that wasn't Aaron Gillan missing frees. That was just there wasn't frees given. So I'd be interested to hear Barry's take on that, because I think there's a difference between we wanting a spectacle and the ref letting it flow and calling frees that are frees. So brilliant occasion, pleasure and honour to be there. And as you say, Jacqui, hurling, look, it's the greatest game in the world, bar none. We're biased, but I think that was another evidence of it there Saturday night.
Yeah, big time. Right, Barry, give us your take then, because I'm very interested in all of what Shane has said. Also, because it seems the first half and the second half were refereed very differently. And then extra time, there's obviously a whole other referee in the ball game too. So give me your sense of kind of what you saw and how difficult the whole occasion must have been to manage. I heard Donald saying at one stage it was like trying to control a ship in the high seas in the dark. And I thought that's exactly what it felt like, because it must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, Jacqui. Pat Moore was a lovely man from Waterford. Great man involved in refereeing, and I remember he said to me maybe 20 years ago, maybe more, when I was kind of starting out my career, he said, don't forget, he said, the only time you have full control of a game is at the throw-in. Like, you know, I remember back in 98 and the Waterford Clare replay, and, you know, you could argue that Willie nearly lost control of that game, nearly at the throw-in, because there was a bit of flaking went on, lads weren't sent off, and it descended into a bit of a farce in a way. And I would say that, you know, I'm not underestimating the job Tyler had. It would have been, you know, these teams played each other 4 or 5 times in the last 12, 15 months. We never had that back in my day, even back in Shane's day. You know, they played at Kilkenny. Shane would play Kilkenny like once a year, and that would have been, you know, probably the height of it, and the league game as well. But the league games are very different. So I'd say Tyler maybe had before he went out, I'd say he probably thought, look, I could blow everything here and I end up with 40 or 50 frees, and no one wants that. And as Shane said, it is trying to get the balance right. And it is a learning curve for Tyler. I refereed Cork and Tip back in 2004 in Killarney, and it was my biggest game. And it was a knockout game. Like, Cork went on to win the All-Ireland. I'd say whoever won that game was nearly going to win the All-Ireland. And I learned an awful lot that day in Killarney. Match was delayed, and it was a hugely intense atmosphere. 2 teams knew they were in the, you know, this was knockout championship hurling. And I'd say Tyler probably went out, right, okay, I'm going to let this go, because the alternative is to blow everything, and no one wants that. But I'd say trying to get the balance right, he probably, you know, even the throw-in was a bit chaotic at the start. And like 6 frees, you know, like, and I'd say at half-time, maybe, I don't know, like, you know, I don't want to be dissing Tyler at all, because he's a fine referee and a great fella, is that, I mean, maybe Liam, maybe James at half-time said to him, you know, a little bit of, maybe, you know, there was 4 or 5 cards given out in the first 6, 7 minutes of the second half, and probably 7 or 8 frees versus... You know, it is very difficult, and it's a much more difficult.
Would that happen, Barry? Can I ask you that? Would that happen? Would somebody come in at halftime and say, "Here, listen, you probably need to dish out a bit more"?
Well, I suppose it's part of a. You know, it's no more than you know. It's no more than Michael Ryan or Liam Sheedy or whatever. You know, Eamon O'Shea talking to Shane when he was playing about a bit of advice. Look at Shane, you need to, you know, get the ball moving quicker. You need to, you know, whatever, get the ball into the forwards in a bit different kind of way. You know, it's part of the team. Like, you're part of a team, and you know, Liam and particularly James Owens, very experienced, and might have just said to him, "Now I don't know this. Like I'm not." Might have said to him, you know, you need to maybe get this a little bit more. You know, I felt at the start of the second half that, you know, it really was. I wasn't getting out of hand, because the players were incredibly disciplined. Like, in terms of, there was no red card. There was no one like retrospective punishment here, because there was no really bad strokes at all. But there was probably a bit of foul that went on, that, you know, he probably needed to blow a bit more. And I'd say look back and said, it'd be a huge learning curve for him as well, because, and don't forget too, like there was very few neutrals at the game. Like it was a sea of red, a sea of green. Normally at a big match like that, you get it. Matches in hurling, you know.
And they weren't shy in letting him know when the decisions were going one way or the other.
And even Rory, everyone got caught up because you have over 40,000, nearly all red or all green.
Yeah.
Everyone's passionate about it. I thought for a change, for once, even John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk, who are normally models of decorum on the sideline, were nearly, a bit more flummoxed or a bit more, intense than normally are. Obviously, half-time, we saw the scenes at half-time, and obviously they're all playing games because let's get in here now and let them know what we want. As Shane said, it's not right. And then suddenly the Cork lads responded very quickly, knowing this is all part of the game here. We can't afford to let Tyler referee the game on Limerick's terms, maybe, as they would have said. In hindsight, looking back, like, regardless of the score or not, like, Pat Ryan, they couldn't afford to take a backward step on Saturday. Otherwise, their season is over. Some inter-county careers are probably on the line if Cork had lost by 10 or 12 points. So Cork couldn't afford to take a backward step. So in hindsight, it was going to be very hard refereed. And the difference in refereeing that game below in the Gaelic grounds, even versus Thurles, I think is significant. But particularly if that game had been in Croke Park, it's just something different about Croke Park. The crowd is not quite on top of you. Yeah. Regardless if it's 83,000 at it. I'd say Shane probably felt there was more intense games maybe in Munster. Maybe not in terms of the opposition, but in terms of the crowd being on top of you. Croke Park is a different kind of stadium. But I'd say, in hindsight, Tyler, I'd say probably blow a few more frees in the first half, get your authority, and then let them play. Like it's like, look, I've never been in the situation, but it's like riding a horse. Like you have to let the horse know who's in control first, and then you can loosen the reins a bit. But I'd say it probably got a little bit, probably too much of a loose rein early on, and then it's hard to pull it back then. Because
are we getting to the stage, right? This is my opinion. We don't want to talk about the ref too much because we want to talk about the hurling and what it was and everything. Yeah. But are we getting to the stage now where, like, say, players are wearing GPSs, and when their GPSs are beeping that they're too tired, they're getting replaced, right? Are we getting to the stage now where the game was never played faster, never played by such physical athletes as we have nowadays? Are we getting to the stage now where if the match is going to extra time, do we have to say to the ref, look, that's you've your job done, so be now. Some people say, well, you're going to get two ways. The way the game's going to be refereed will be totally different. I know that was mentioned definitely when he was replaced. Said, oh, this game's going to be refereed differently now. But I just think, can we keep asking the same person to keep going in the middle if we're taking off the players who, obviously they're getting hits and their sprints are more intense, but is that something we need to look at really? Like, do we have to replace the ref? Because mentally they're going to be fatigued, and then therefore their decisions are going to be affected by that mental fatigueness as well. Like,
yeah, I actually think it's definitely, like, we saw Johnny last the Lurling final, and
100%. He definitely fatigued.
The issue here, I suppose, as well, is that if you were in a situation where they weren't being looked after in terms of fitness, or they weren't going through the ringer in terms of beep tests and all that, you'd say, okay, referees need to get fitter. But like, these lads are hitting 17.4, 17.5 in beep tests, and like, Shane himself will know that. Like, that's not simple. Particularly, okay, Tyler's younger than most of the referees. Like, he probably would be not much older than, say, Declan Hannon or Seamus Harley or Hoggy. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. Like, I think you have a choice to make. You either replace the referee at some stage during extra time. It's not a good look, or it's not a good, and it's harder on James Owens coming in as well. Whereas if you know automatically that this game ends in extra time, this game ends normal time, it's over. There's another 20 minutes, 25 minutes probably in reality. Yeah. Someone else takes over. Like, I don't think that's a problem at all, to be honest. Like, you might be probably half relieved in a way that you're after going through 77, 78 minutes. My job is done. Yeah. Gives the other referee a chance to maybe, right, I've got a few minutes here to, like, I even saw James Owens when he took over from Tyler, and Tyler was suffering massively from cramp, and James Owens was trying to explain to him, probably he's been booked, he's been ticked. There's a lot to take on board there, like that in the space of, I mean, you can do it in the dressing room at the end of normal time. I think, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I think that's something that we should consider, certainly. You do the job, your job is done well. And it means the standby referee is then really, he's tuned into it as well. He's going, right, I'm going to take over here now. And,
Barry, in 2004, you said I learned a couple of things. I just want to say one quick thing to you. Did you learn about the state of the sliotar that Don Lowe handed Owen Kelly for a penalty in that match? Because it was something similar, like if you hit it out to a bog and you found it 20 years later, That's what Kelly says was the similar sliotar he got for the penalty that day. So
Rock
that was
hard.
that's probably a lot of maybe that you didn't realise.
I tell you what, and something similar happened to Shane in 2005. They did the Munster final in 2005, and Cork got a penalty this time. I think it was Cork. No, did Cork get a penalty? Maybe Tipperary got another penalty. But anyway, I remember the ball came out. Owen got a ball from Donlow, and this time I was a bit innocent. The ball he gave out like was a brand new sliotar. Like it was absolutely pristine, and I was like looking at it. And the tip lads were arguing, "That's not the ball." And I said, "Look, lads, it's a brand new ball. What more do you want? Like it's nearly out of plastic."
It's after being in the back of water for about 3 weeks before the game.
The rims on it. Do you remember? Like Sully used to have the Rock used to have a ball in his fucking shorts nearly half the game anyway to hand it to you in case of an event like that happening.
There you go.
Yeah, fair enough, Shane.
Another
By the way, Shane, they wouldn't tell me back then, Shane. Paul Kelly or Colin Morrissey, one of them pulled a bad stroke on the verge of half time.
No way.
I booked the wrong lad. The tip lads were up in arms. And I said to I remember talking to some of the tip lads at the sideline. I said, "Which lad was it?" Well, you got the wrong one is all they tell me. They wouldn't tell me who it was though. That was before they had clean midfielders, Shane, like yourself.
Oh, lads, you'd want to be wily for it. Rory, it does kind of raise the point generally, though, around player welfare, because I know, penalties is something that a lot of people felt shouldn't be happening. I wonder, with all of that in mind, if maybe we should just say there's no extra time, there's no penalties, it's just a replay.
I think, look, you can't argue with extra time with the way the calendar is. Penalties, I think it was embarrassing. I think it was shameful. Shameful, actually, to have a contest like that decided by penalties. And the thing is, I said this last year after the Armagh game, I stand over it. Like, if you'll indulge me for 1 second, Jacqui, just in relation to the concept of penalties, right? So let's just take it very, very basic. The first thing to say, the penalty itself, it's brand new. In hurling terms, and in the sport, in a sporting context, it's a newborn baby. It came in 2015 because of the Anthony Nash style, where he was able to scoop the ball in 10 yards. Shane played and Barry refed at a time where there used to be 3 lads on the line. So this isn't a cultural thing that's built up like soccer over 120 years. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing is, it is not cultural. No one practices them, bar maybe the lad who's on the freeze, or maybe the backup free taker. It's not something that they're prepping for. The third thing, I think it is a silly creation that's a lazy solution to the daftest sporting schedule in the history of sport. The fourth thing is, how in the hell are you supposed to create an environment that preps this eventuality? How are you supposed to create that? Let's plan for penalties at the end of 100 minutes of high-octane hurling. It's just not even on your radar. And the fifth thing is, right, you are the manager. So I've made 8 substitutions, maybe 9. I've had a red card. I've had a black card. I've 3 lads with cramp. I've another fella who's got a broken finger. Who have I got left on the field that's actually, physically able to take one? You can't plan for that. You can't plan. So the point is, it is a lottery. And it's unlikely, if it were to come to pass, because we just don't know whether Declan Hannon will be fit, if Limerick are for first choice, we know he's lost his place. If that were to be Declan Hannon's last act in a Limerick senior inter-county jersey, it's disgraceful. It's a disgrace. Utter disgrace. And I totally disagree with it. I can't understand for the life of me why there couldn't have been a replay next Saturday night down the park. Another 40,000, a big payday for the GA. Everyone keeps talking about the debt that Cork have. Here was an opportunity to certainly alleviate some of that. And for what? For what? Limerick did not lose this game. They didn't lose it. It was only a decision around which bus the cup went home on. And to my mind, that is something that the GA should be embarrassed about, because I thought it was very indignifying for the referee himself to be getting Adam English trying to do, leg cramping. And I mean, would the powers that be, does anybody know, would the powers that be sitting down on a Monday morning and saying, Jenny, that was great now. That was fabulous to see that now. I can't compute it.
Yeah. I actually think that sentiment would probably be shared, Shane. I did just have a look over the weekend of what people were saying generally in newspaper articles, on podcasts, on the internet. And it did seem quite split. Some people were saying, as Rory said, oh, that's very dramatic and what an incredible finish. There seemed to be maybe a bigger sway of people who just felt, what's one more week in a weekend, next weekend, where there's only round robin football games. We could have pocketed one more hurling game in the midst of it, and still the season wouldn't have been that bad. It'd still be another 3 or 4 weeks till those teams were out again. I think the space was there.
It was.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be for the penalties. Now, I'll make this, I'll play devil's advocate here. I think sport is cruel, right? And I think sport can be cruel in many different ways, especially in hurling with the speed of the game and everything. So it could be a missed tackle that leads to someone losing the match. It could be a red card. It could be a missed shot. It could be a lot of things, okay? And I suppose penalties is just another cruel way, I suppose, of losing in sport. The reason I wouldn't be for penalties in hurling is, I suppose, when we say penalties, the first sport usually that will spring to mind for the general public will be soccer. And the reason we will have penalties in soccer is because usually, more often than not, there hasn't been a score in the game. So they need someone to score to win the match.
Yeah.
And I think in hurling terms, that's never going to be the issue. We're never, ever, ever going to have a game where it goes to penalties and there's never been a score. That's why I'm not for penalties in hurling. I think there's been enough scores in the game. And that's why I don't think we need to have a competition to see that more scores win the game because of the volume of scores we've had to get there. So that's why I would be for the extra time, but after the extra time is a draw, I'd be for the replay. I think in this scenario, the replay is very, very doable because of the manner of games that are on next weekend. And I don't think you'd have too many people complaining to say, if it is only a week in between that and the quarterfinal, that's, I suppose, the nature of the beast of going to the replay after extra time. So that's why I wouldn't be for the penalties in hurling. I just think it's usually a way of deciding a game when there hasn't been as much scores or any scores like we have in soccer. Whereas in hurling and Gaelic football nowadays, we have a large volume of scores that we don't need a competition to see and more scores. So the thing was brilliant. Would I agree with it ending on the penalties? I wouldn't personally. I understand why people saying, "Oh, everyone knew it was happening and all this." I get that, and sport is cruel, and this is another cruel way to play it. But you know, if the calendar allows, which it did, Jacqui, extra time. Yeah.
And it's funny because actually you've said that it's a lottery and all of that. But I was listening to Pat Ryan after the match, Barry, and he was asked directly, "Did you practice penalties during the week?" And he said, "No." You know, like even though their All-Ireland final last year was a draw, and, you know, they've had draws in the earlier round of games in Munster, they're still not waiting for an outcome of a draw. They're still thinking, you know, somebody's going to win it in extra time. And I think Shane is right, and Rory has said it as well. You cannot legislate for a fella having cramp, not being able to do it. Just because a fella might be your key free taker doesn't mean like, look at Hoggy. You would have put your house on him being one of the penalty takers, but he wasn't able for it. He was in a tracksuit in the stands because he couldn't give any more. You know, you just don't know. John Kiley said the same thing. He was just relying on fellas to come in and put their hand up. So you have no idea even who your 5 fellas are going to be taking these penalties. And I think that's the difficulty in this situation.
And the other thing, Jacqui, too, is that in normal course of events, I'd say if you had stats on this, there's probably 8 out of 10 penalties scored in inter-county matches in hurling. It's very rare to miss, to be honest. And like you had the top lads in the country playing on Saturday evening, and we had 4 penalties missed? Cork won 3-2. 4 penalties missed, and Shane Kingston's penalty, I'd say Kieran Kingston was probably a very relieved man it was scored. Like Shane Kingston's penalty, Nicky would probably feel that, God, that was one that slipped by. I should have stopped that, to be honest. It wasn't the best penalty. It just happened to, got through Nicky just about. So there was 4 penalties well struck out of 9 from the really top-class hurlers. So they're not practicing them, but also they're shattered at the end of it.
Shattered.
Psychologically, it's obviously huge pressure on them. I'd have no problem with penalties after a replay and the replay's gone to extra time. Like at some stage, you need to say, right, lads, we need to move on here. But, and that could happen, obviously. These teams are so well matched, and lots of teams are so well matched. But I would actually say probably, and I know teams do incredible preparation now, I would say there were probably some players on the field during extra time. And if you ask them, if this ends in a draw, what's going to happen? And I would say some players probably thought, well, to be a replay, surely. I would say some of the players didn't realise there was penalties. Because if you're not going to take a penalty, like if you're the Cork cornerback and the chances are you're not taking a penalty, you're probably thinking, is there penalties here? Like, I mean, I would say that's how, against the whole grain it is. And again, and Rory made the point there, but the obvious ones, like Tom Dempsey must have been the Wexford man. He must have been tearing his hair out because he had a bit of a rant is unfair because he made some very, very good points. But, a chance for an extra hurling match between two brilliant teams. And we've only got 7 or 8 teams left in the championship and only 7 hurling matches left. And we're turning our nose up. It's different to Munster playing the Sharks last week. You have to have nearly penalties there because you can't have a replay. Like, you can't expect the Sharks to turn around and travel to Munster, thousands of miles for a replay. This is like Cork and Limerick are 50, 60 miles away in some places or less. Ask what do you got it?
Darragh Fitzgibbon.
Ask Darragh Fitzgibbon how far away they are. But so like absolutely replay after extra time, and then extra time again, and then if we have to go to penalties, you've given it 4 good ways of separating them. You can't separate them, right? We need to move on, lads. We've got a calendar to stick to. But this has to be looked at, no question. Like I even felt last year, the Leinster final, going to extra time was like, I thought that was a missed opportunity. There was no need. At one point, separate the sides at the end. Like, these teams are so well matched. Let's go and play it properly and have a replay after an All-Ireland final. It's nuts. It's so hard to raise money in society, and 80,000 at a replay, even at a knockdown price of €50, 4 million to be given out to clubs and given out to county boards and whatever else is just, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Come here. I'm
some
conscious.
Game, lads.
It was.
It was.
And I was just going to say, I'm conscious
game.
that we actually need to talk about the game as well, because
it was an unbelievable game.
Yeah, it was. And like Shane, I think you're right, even just with the exhaustion around it. I think because there was so much drama at the end with all of that went on, you'd nearly forget, like they were level 17 times in the game. Like, that's absolutely outrageous stuff, isn't it? Like, I don't even know where to start with. Like, give us your sense of like how you felt this game kind of panned out, because it was very hard to pick a winner, even penalties, all that regardless. It swung one way, then the other. And then just when you think, okay, this team is going to run away with it, they're right back in there. It was everything that we probably didn't get 3 weeks ago, and maybe everything we didn't expect that we were going to get.
Yeah, I quickly go through it, Jacqui, right? Because it's been well documented what happened. But like from being there, I suppose, like say, shots at goal for Limerick in the first half. So I have it down that they'd actually 6 shots at the goal. One of them being called back from Keane Lynch for Aidan O'Connor that it was thrown. And then you have Adam English, he's 2 goal chances, gets 1 shot off. Garrod Hegarty gets a shot off. Garrod Hegarty gets a shot off after Cork or after scoring their goal. So like, in hindsight, you might look back at it and say, if he just taps it over the bar, you now make the Cork goal, Shane Barrett's goal, a 2-point goal rather than a 3-point goal. And that's what teams will go after, like when they'll try and respond straight away after a goal. I thought Mike Casey was absolutely unbelievable for the first 20-25 minutes. He was like a young lad, sprinting out in front of every ball. He was phenomenal, as was the Limerick full back line. And Cork just weren't getting a lot in the ball into their full forward line. But then whatever changed, or something changed after 20-25 minutes, and they just started going long. And it caused consternation with Brian Hayes in there. Alan Connolly started growing into the game. Hoggy started getting more into the game. And even their half-forward line was very interesting the way they were setting up, that Diarmuid Healy was 11, but he would constantly switch over and back with Shane Barrett, and that Shamie Harnedy would stay on the wing, and they'd go after him for a 1v1, which he won a lot of. And Harnedy's ability to win primary possession was what got him a few scores in the first half. So even the way Cork changed mid-half in the first half, I think it gave him a bit of a platform going in, because they went in at 4 points up at half time. Hypothetically, if it'd gone in and it was a draw, or Limerick had, taken any half of those chances and they're coming into the breeze, I think it's a different second half the way they set up. Then into the second half, as I said, it's just the wides. Like, I don't think Barry Nash or Peter Casey, would ever have those wides again. I think the breeze is a big factor. Even look at Darragh Donovan's last shot. I think he had it over the bar before he took the shot. Like, these are all 1%ers in a game of a million things that happened. Like, and that's the second half. Cork just stay in the game. They just stay in the game all the time. And in the second half, it's 1-9 Limerick score with the wind, and Cork score 8 points against the wind, 5 from play, 3 from freeze. And it just, everybody's getting blocks in, trying to cut off space. I love the fact that nowadays, in my time, if you left one of the full back line with 20, 30 yards space front of them, they would be roaring at the halfbacks, would be roaring at the midfields to get back. And nowadays they seem very, very comfortable with it. Like they like that 1v1 with a bit of space in front of them, that it's nearly a test for them. It's nearly to say to Sean O'Donoghue or Owen Downey or Mike Casey or Sean Finn, you win your battle because I got to go out the field here and mark this guy. And that's the way it was, particularly for the Cork defence, that they went out the field and they left that 1v1. And to be fair to the Cork defence, they did really well. I was very critical of Kieran Joyce in the first 20 minutes. I couldn't believe he was left on Cian Lynch because I thought Cian Lynch would win every battle. But he had a super game after that. He really did. And he really, really stood up as a big leader for Cork. And then quickly into extra time, lads. I'll just give you one fact in extra time because there was a lot of misses, a lot of tired bodies. But in extra time, Limerick had 7 whites and Cork had 1.
Yeah.
And, when you look back at those things, who was the better team overall? I still couldn't say, lads. I still honestly couldn't say. Maybe Cork just about. But when Limerick look back at those stats to say that they had 7 wides in extra time and Cork only had 1, they'll probably feel, that this was a game that they should have won. They didn't. And just finally, the impact off the benches, lads, was unbelievable. Like, Limerick got, I have it here, 1-5 from play off their bench. Peter Casey gets a point, Decky Hannon gets a point, Shane O'Brien gets 1-2, Darragh Donovan gets a point. Cork get 6 points from play off their bench. Tommy O'Connell makes an unbelievable hook on Cathal O'Neill for the ball to go wide near the end. And they get 2 penalty scores in the form of Conor Lehane and Shane Kingston. And we're just talking about finishers and starters and finishers. Kevin McMenamin was the ultimate finisher for Dublin footballers. And now we're seeing it in hurling that lads are being kept to finish the game. That's a very brief synopsis, I suppose, from being there, what I've seen. I know we're talking about things that shouldn't be happening or are happening with refereeing and with the way games are finishing. But overall, it was an unbelievably exciting game. I do think the standard was below what we've come to expect from Limerick and Cork, with the amount of mistakes, basic handling errors, etc. But, it's easy talk for me sitting up there watching down at them. There was a lot of, the atmosphere was very intense. It was intense in the field. I'm just glad, lads, it wasn't roasting hot, because I don't think lads would have made it through if it was a roasting hot day. It was a nice day. The rain stayed away. Breeze was a factor. But overall, would I take anything back from being there? No, I wouldn't take any second of it back, no.
Yeah, I think it's Rory, it's what the outcome of it is as opposed to what the quality and the drama is. Because now for Cork, I think the biggest prize of all maybe actually might be 4 weeks off to try to get everybody back. I think it'll be the first time this season maybe they'll have a full squad to pick from in the championship. And I think for Limerick, because they haven't been this route before, and maybe they're looking at an All-Ireland semi-final potentially against Kilkenny, I think maybe they might just think, look, we're fine. We didn't lose the game, as you said. We actually played really well. John Kiley felt that they were the better team in extra time, even with all those wides. I think they'll quietly feel, do you know what? Losing this game, grand. We're still fighting in this, and maybe we still are the best team in the country.
Hey, Limerick lost nothing in defeat, and for me, I think they are still the benchmark, and they will continue to be until somebody knocks them out of the championship. They were magnificent at times, just all like from start to finish. Nicky Quaid in goal, incredible. Right, like Cian Lynch in the first. Now, Cian Lynch didn't score, which was very unusual, but this play in the first 20 minutes. I mean, some of the catches, his ability to open play up. I don't think they'll be unduly worried. I did think it was a little surprising, the comment in the post about the rubs of greens and other teams being lucky. I thought that was a surprising comment, which I'd say won't be lost on some people. But I think, look, from a Cork perspective, it's ideal to go into the Munster series, into the All-Ireland series now for the first time with a championship medal in their back pocket. I think that'll help them grow even further. Jacqui, Cork will be like the Dothraki coming up for that semi-final. They'll fill Croke Park. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised 60,000 Cork people will come up for that. It will be hordes. Now, if it is Tip, you better start the clarion call soon. No, they Tip of a few hurdles to jump in the meantime. But I'm telling you, Shane, if it is Tipperary, once those tickets go on sale.
But come here, if the tickets go on general sale on Wednesday, Cork get them on Monday night. Is that the way it normally is?
Yeah.
I think it's the Saturday fixture as well this time round.
Yeah,
it's Saturday. It's on the Saturday the 5th. But I think, look, they'll go in. And look, just one final point. And we're speaking to people here, and we've all had tragedy. And I know we're speaking to people here who've had a lot of personal tragedy in their lives. I'm just delighted for Pat Ryan. I'm just delighted for Pat Ryan, and I'm delighted for the Ryan family. And it's a big vindication for him, and just fantastic for him. And well done to Pat.
Yeah, I thought Henry called it well on the analysis on Saturday evening. The camera went to Pat Ryan just before the penalties. He's walking off the pitch. He'd spoken to the players. You could see him kind of, looking upwards, and and everyone watching who knows the situation. And Henry mentioned it afterwards, and I thought it was just a nice touch. It's the closeness of the association, and you can see there's an awful lot of respect.
Everyone loves him, Barry. Yeah. Everyone loves him.
They love him.
One other thing that
stands out in the tunnel as well is nice touch. Yeah. He stands out in the tunnel, Barry, just from being there now. Quickly, I'm going to move on, but he stands out in the tunnel. The last 2 or 3 minutes, I think he leaves to the players. Where we are doing the radio, you can see down the tunnels, and he comes out and he stands out in the tunnel as a member of the backroom team, and he just leaves it to the players. I really admire that with a lot of intercounty managers nowadays. They know I've said my bit now. They need to talk themselves, and that's what he did at every break, in the game there Saturday night as well. Yeah.
One other thing, Jacqui, just to mention, I just thought, there's 2 other things very briefly. At the end of the actual, when penalties are over, like for the 2 keepers to go to each other, normally in other sports,
great moment.
Yourself. I thought that was an incredible.
Patrick Collins went straight over to Nicky Quaid, and Nicky Quaid just patted him on the chest, and the 2 of them shook hands. I thought it was a gorgeous moment.
And the other thing too was, I watched this on television. When the match is over, the whole match is over, and the Cork crowd on the pitch, Kyle Hayes was standing on the pitch, and there was young lads, probably from Cork and from Limerick, and they were taking selfies, and he was signing autographs, and I'm sure lots of other players too. And like for the Limerick players to be on the pitch, and like I'm quite sure there was nothing bad, nothing negative said to them. Like I think we have that in the GAA, and it is just that intangible that is worth. It's so incredibly and you're talking there about Cork and Tip possibly playing in the semi-final, and yourself, you'll be walking down Jones's Road, and the 4 lads from Tip and 3 lads from Cork, that's having 2 points together, and you contrast that with other sports where the home team or the away team supporters have to stay back for 2 hours in case they kill each other in a local train station, and I just thought a few of those images after the game were just. The 2 keepers shaking hands. There was such respect and no gloating. And it'd be very easy for the Cork keeper to start running around the place like a lunatic when he probably couldn't run anyway at that stage. But to go and shake hands with his opposite number, just the respect there. I'm sure there's a great photograph there by, some of the lads in Sports File or by Info, and I'm sure there's a great photograph.
Well, I'd say the whole catalogue is going to be full of the Munster final this year, I'd say. Season Sunday.
Yeah.
A season Sunday, just to the Munster final.
Oh, lads, it was top drawer. It really was. It's sort of a pity in a way then, Shane, it didn't spill over into yesterday, because I thought the Joe McDonagh final was great and fierce, intense drama, but the Leinster final just lacked that atmosphere, even from early on when it was actually tight early in the game. Just never got to the pitch, and it's just hard to know, even with both teams. Kilkenny straight through to a semi-final potentially against Limerick, as we say. Dublin obviously on that side of the draw with Kildare as well. But then, for Galway licking their wounds after an 8-point defeat, you just wonder what sort of headspace they're in today.
Yeah, it is hard to know, Jacqui. It is, and I suppose frustration for a lot of Galway people might be that it just took them so long to actually get into the game or get to the pitch of it. Like in the final quarter of the game, just have it there. Like they took 10 shots at goal, but they scored 9 of them, and that they were kind of given an indicator to say, right, let's hurl now, let's go at this. And I suppose the big learning for them could be this, or for any team, it could be this. Do not hit high balls into the Kilkenny full back line, because they have just the greatest fullback athlete I've seen in a long time.
It was nearly performance of the weekend, really.
Hugh Lawler is the kind of fella, he's such an athlete, right, that when he's 48, they'll still be asking him to play corner forward in the junior team in the Loughlin Gales. He's unbelievable.
The claw will just come up.
But just the way he came down one time and he just spun. He did a full spin like you'd see from a wide receiver in NFL or something. He just came down, caught it, did his spin, and he was gone into space. And everyone's looking around going, what just happened there? And I just think it was ball after ball after ball. And I feel sorry for Kilkenny club hurlers, when they go out play a Loughlin Gales, to say, right, the best form of attack is defence. Their defence has Paddy Deeg and Mikey Butler and Hugh Lawler, and you're going, Jesus Christ, how are we going to manage these 3 lads, let alone try and win this game? So he's just unbelievable. But I think the biggest testament I give Hugh Lawler is everybody who's ever marked him, whether you meet him casually or you hear them talking in public, Neil McMahon said it, Joe Canning said it, Shamey would say it, a lot of people would say, I'm sure the Limerick lads say it, Hugh Lawler is just unbelievable. And he just proved that again yesterday. He was immense. So that'll be a big learning for a lot of teams from Galway yesterday, say, you know, like sometimes you have to avoid Keane Lynch, or sometimes teams have to, you know, man mark somebody. I think the thing when you're playing Kilkenny is, and maybe it will be Limerick who will be playing them in the semi-final, say, lads, we cannot poke high ball down on top of Kilkenny. I think Galway, I think Cathal Mannion really stepped up again yesterday. It's very hard, Jacqui, for a player who's been so consistent up to the final to play well in the final. I thought he was brilliant again yesterday. He really stood up as a leader. I thought from a Kilkenny point of view, Adrian Mullen was brilliant. He was maybe given a bit too much room. You know, again, you have to tie these lads down. He got the freedom of Croke Park there yesterday. His last 2 shots, he had time to look up and pick where he wanted to put it. I think Cian Kenny has established himself now as one of the top midfielders in the country. I think last year he was unlucky not to be an all-star. And I just think from playing midfield myself and in Croke Park that, yeah, he's getting on ball and he's very good interlinking play. And I think it showed the trust and the need that Derek Ling has in him, in that he got booked so early, but there was never a question he was getting taken off, because they know they need him on the field to do what they want to do. The other thing for me with Cian Kenny is he is very, very, he knows where the posts are. But as a midfielder, because Croke Park just plays so differently, whatever's going on outside Croke Park with the weather, Jacqui, inside Croke Park is usually different with the way the wind is and everything. So for him to be scoring 2-3 points a game now from midfield shows the confidence he has in his own striking ability as well to get into the position to take on these shots. So Hugh Lawler, Cian Kenny, Adrian Mullen, and the greatest hurler of all time, in my opinion, TJ Reid, to be doing what he's doing, not even the frees he scores, not the goal he scored, because we just expect that from TJ. That's TJ. Like, if he gets the ball inside the 21, for him to take on the goal shot after over carrying the ball before that, I would have tapped it over the bar. So would 99% of hurlers. But he knew, no, we need something here. And you can't teach that to anybody. But from what sums up TJ for me is this: Kilkenny needed a play. They needed a play. They needed something to happen to curb Galway, to put a sting in it. Might be someone going down. What does Owen Murphy do? Looks for the 36-year-old. Puts the puck out down on top of him. And it wasn't Jacqui that he rose up above everybody. But while there was mayhem around him, he just put his hand up in that forest of Hurleys, snapped the ball, quenched the whole thing. And I think that's why, for me, TJ is the greatest. Like, he's been involved in great teams, and I've been lucky enough to play against him. And I'll tell my grandchildren that I was on the same field as TJ Reid, because he does things that you can't teach anybody to do. And I know Kilkenny are a team, and they'll never go on about what TJ does. But Jesus Christ, to see him still doing it there yesterday, like, I mean,
he's 38. He's 38.
He's 38.
A couple of months.
Jeez,
He's
I thought
38.
he was 36.
He's 38 in a couple of
Is
months.
he 38? Oh my
all right,
God.
well, someone will tell us anyway we're wrong about his birthday, but
Yeah.
whatever he is, there's lads not playing club hurling at his age because of one thing or another. And for him to still be doing it, he's just unbelievable.
And the other thing as well, Shane, like, it was a very good forwards performance. We know their backs are as good as what's out there. But they still have Owen Cody to come back into the mix. He didn't play, obviously. All their starting forwards scored from play. And I think it was a kind of a professional job, if you would want to call it that. Galway were very disappointing, though.
Oh my God, I've just seen, he's 37.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
He'll be 38 later this year. Jesus Christ, lads. I feel terrible now. I'm only a couple of years older than him, and I can barely play junior hurling.
I think, Jacqui, one thing that I totally agree. TJ's been incredible. And over the years, even, like, and Shane obviously has belly full of Kilkenny in terms of the obviously incredible skill levels and so on. But over the years, their ability to catch ball has been just unparalleled, I think, in the GA in terms of, like, I remember, like, Tommy and JJ were just like amazing men. For not working 6 foot tall, Hurley, to catch ball. And like, now you have TJ and Hugh Lawler, and like, Shane's right, the ball that TJ caught at the end of the game yesterday, there's about 12 lads going for the ball. Like, I actually found it hard to see in television who has the ball. The next thing he has it in his hand, and then even just the presence of mind, like, lay it off to the fella I know who's going to fire this. Even if Adrian Mullen fired it wide, even, it's just done enough to, as Shane says, quench the kind of Galway kind of spirit. But one other thing I think is worth mentioning, I think Limerick not winning the game, and Rory said they didn't actually lose the game technically, is that it's an extra game though. And it's unlike, like everyone talked years ago about in football, Kerry lost 2 finals in 83 and 82 and 83, and they came back then and won 3 in a row. And obviously Shane is aware that, Kilkenny lost to them in 2010. They came back then and won 11 and 12 and 14 and 15. But
I know, Barry. I know.
Sorry, Shane. But they weren't playing the same volume of games, those teams that Limerick are playing now. It's with an extra game, even if it's against Dublin, it's an extra day to tog out, to get ready. And I would think that Kilkenny have been not that far away in the last 2 or 3 years. And it is nearly, how many more times can TJ go to the well? Just discovered he's 38 shortly. Like, it's nearly do or die for that Kilkenny in terms of, he's the only one in Owen Murphy with Ireland medals in that squad. Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, Mikey Butler, they've a lot of top-class hurlers. They will fancy the chances to be
relish. They will relish the prospect of Limerick.
And don't forget last year, arguably last year, they would have looked at the Ireland final last year and thought, we should be where Clare are. We were the better team in the first half last year, and we didn't punish Clare, and we got caught. And I would think they're probably still good odds to win the All-Ireland. You'd probably get Kilkenny at 7-2 at least, I would think. I don't know, but maybe more. But I would think they are going to be a serious opposition. It's just, can Limerick, they've played 5 championship games this year so far. Okay, they have rejuvenated the team a bit. They brought in 3 or 4 new players. But there's a lot of lads in that team with a lot of mileage. And that's the benefit that Pat Ryan and those lads have now. It's the 4-week gap. Limerick can't, tapering, just come into it now. You're resting this week. You do a small bit for the Dublin game. You recover and you go again. Kilkenny now can do a block, a bit like Armagh in football. Armagh have 4 weeks now that is going to be hugely beneficial. They have a dead rubber game as far as they're concerned. I think that could be consequential down the line.
I think it's funny, the disparity for the teams, because you look at the situation Tip are in there, Shane, where they're just sitting back, been off for a few weeks. It's all very quiet in the camp.
Our team still in championship?
Yeah, see, there you go.
Who knew?
Whisper it quietly.
Yeah, forgot that.
But the thing is, because on that side of the draw, there's all that as well. You're sitting there, you're waiting, you're watching, nobody's talking. But there's trepidation on that side of the draw as well, because I think Galway probably underperformed at the weekend. Nobody really knows what they're going to get. And because you've been so quiet sitting in Tip, God only knows what we're going to get on this side of the draw.
I remember we met Waterford a few years ago in a match. Might have been 2008 on our semi-final. We met Tony Brown afterwards. We were on a trip. And Tony just said, we were waiting in the long grass for you. And I was there going, oh, yeah. So I won't say Tip are waiting in the long grass for anyone, but they're doing fine, right? So they'll play above in Portlaoise next Saturday. We'll have our fixture there lunchtime today, I'm sure, as in the time it's going to be on. Laois are going to find it very, very hard to get back up from yesterday, because it wasn't the fact that they lost.
It's a big ask, isn't it?
It was the fact that they lost so badly. You know what I mean? And it's a big ask for them. And you have to go back to maybe when Eddie Brennan was over Laois for there to be an upset, a big upset when Laois bet Dublin in Portlaoise at this stage. A good few years ago. It's probably 7 years ago now, is it? Maybe more.
2019.
2019, 6 years ago, yeah. Because Tip actually played Laois above in Croke Park after it. And Tip should be winning that game, and Dublin should be beating Kildare, but obviously we'll talk about it before we finish up. Kildare is the greatest hurling story of 2025, no matter what happens, really, to do what they've done. And I think Tip are in and I think personally, Jacqui, not everyone agreed with me, but a lot of hurling people actually did. I said we were as well off not being a Munster final this year, right? I think we will be competitive in it soon. We will be in a place in the next year or two to really, really be competitive to win a Munster final. I do firmly believe that with the group that's coming and the group that's there. I think we're as well off not being in this year, and we're in a place now where we're going in next Saturday. Yeah, we'll be expected to win, and we should win. And I fully believe we will win. And then you're going to play Galway. And that will probably be a double header. Where it's on, not sure. It won't be Croke Park anyway. So it could be on in Thurles, could be on in Limerick. It's hard to know where it's going to be on, really, I suppose, because you're going to probably have Dublin v Limerick, and you're going to have more than likely Tip v Galway.
Yeah.
So the venue for that will be an interesting one to see where that's going to be played. So our Tip are in a grand place.
Should bring it down to Parky Queeve, Shane. We'll fill that as well.
Come here, we'll go to Cork. We've no bother going to Cork.
Of course you don't.
Know what I mean? We love going to Cork. So I just think after next weekend and you get your definite fixtures, I think, you could be fairly sure what's going to happen, who's going to come out of it. And then the whole thing takes on a new different form, a new different life as well. So, but the Kildare thing, lads, I know we're going to talk about it now. It's unbelievable. And I suppose I got to know Brian Dowling from playing against him, and he was actually in college in Limerick there for a while, the same time as me. And like, he's a staunch Kilkenny man and will be till the day he dies. And maybe we're looking at a future Kilkenny senior hurling manager here and what he's done with their Camogie team and what he's done now with Kildare. But the camera just flashed him.
And Kieran's as well. He's been bringing through.
And I just
had
to give a small shout out. There was a Tipperary man involved, Richie Root from Thurles. So we were getting our hands in many pies there, helping out all the hurling fraternity. But Brian Dowling, the camera just flashed him. And like, for a Kilkenny man to be as emotional as he was about Kildare winning an All-Ireland hurling title, I think that shows where Kildare hurling's at, how much it means to people at Kildare, and how much of a backing he's getting from their county board and their players. I think the way they spoke about him yesterday in afterwards in their speeches and everything, that obviously, he's very, more so than Pat Ryan is Cork lads. Brian Dowling obviously means a lot to these Kildare lads, and I've no doubt he'll be their manager next year when they go to Liam McCarthy. But look, that is the hurling story of 2025. Charlotte Burns referenced it in his speech. We've all referenced it here loads of times, lads. Like, if you want, what's it they say in the film? If you build it, they will come. What's the name of the film?
Yeah, Field of Dreams. Yeah.
So if you go at it, and if you really want something, and you try hard enough, and you get the right people involved, Kildare are the poster of that, and should be going forward in terms of hurling development in this country, like.
Well, they should be. And you know what? They're going to have a fight in their hands in their own county, Barry, because if the footballers don't win the Tailteann Cup, which now there's major pressure on Kildare to actually win that, their hurlers are playing Division 1B hurling next year. They're going to have big teams coming to Newbridge week on week. They're going to be playing Liam McCarthy hurling. You're going to have TJ Reid, these kind of people coming in. And the footballers could potentially still be playing second-tier competition. I think you might start seeing kids around Kildare walking around with Hurleys. And I know that's already happening. I see it with my own kids. They go down to play Nace, and you want to see the structures that are going on down there. It's phenomenal. But I do think you're going to start to see a turn coming now where the development is actually being met now by a greater optimism by young kids who can actually genuinely see a future now. And I think that's massive for the game.
Yeah, and absolutely, Jacqui. And I suppose population-wise or demographic-wise, there's a lot of people living in Kildare who are not native Kildare people, but there's a lot of people living in Kildare who are from traditional hurling counties, who are, your first love is hurling. You're from Tip or Limerick and you can't afford a house in Dublin, you live in Kildare, then your first love is hurling. You're going to go into your local club and you're going to bring that kind of level of almost expertise to the whole thing, which is what's happening in Kildare. And the other thing, Shane mentioned Brian Dowling, like in terms of the hurling story of the year, but also the managerial story of the year. Because they lost, they hadn't won, they lost nearly every game in McDonagh Cup until very recently. Yeah. And then they lost their first game against Kerry. So like, they would have been probably the bookies' favourites to get relegated nearly after the first game. And they've now beaten Laois twice, to beat Westmeath, to beat Carlow, to beat Down. Like, to go, they haven't won it the easy way. Beaten Laois twice, not easy to beat any team twice in the championship. Laois could arguably have won last year's McDonagh Cup. They probably had great chance against Offaly. And obviously, well beaten yesterday. Shane referenced very hard for Laois. The other thing too is that, we'd probably have to look at this All-Ireland preliminary quarter final. Like Shane mentioned Eddie Brennan. Yeah. Like, it's the one game that is held up as a reason, but it's the average defeat in those games is 17 points. And no one would be surprised, like, that Tip would beat Laois by, let's be honest now, 17 points would be probably regarded as an achievement by Laois next weekend. Like, those lads, naturally, there's a few beers being had today in both camps. Like, will Kildare stop having a few beers today? Would you blame having a few beers tomorrow? Yeah. Not a bit.
Barry, if you were to flip it around to Liam McCarthy now, right, quickly. Imagine the All-Ireland hurling finals on the 3rd week of July, right? And that match is on. And then after that match, you would say to everyone, by the way, you won this, but to play in a competition, you have to play another match next Saturday. And they'd be like, well, I'm not going to be home till Thursday. So, best of luck me getting right for that match.
And also, Shane, if you take any competition where you win it, the prize is always the following year. The prize is the promotion. It's not the now. You celebrate the now. Like that's where I just don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, are we nearly punishing them for for winning the thing by
Spread
making a
it
play
out,
and
like
actually 6
again,
days later.
like spread it out a little bit more. Spread that actual competition out a little bit more. There's 5 or 6 rounds as they go through it, much like the provincial championship campaigns. And if you had the final on hurling semi-final weekend, much like the Tailteann Cup is, and slot it in there, because that's a sort of a Mardi Gras weekend for hurling anyway. It's a natural fit, and that's your conclusion of your season. Do they really need this game next week? They don't. Now, look, it's a promotional opportunity as well from a Kildare point of view. Having Dublin going down to Newbridge playing, senior hurling championship is a big thing from their point of view. But at the same time, I'm not sure about the value. I thought yesterday, Jacqui, I was actually a little bit emotional on the full-time whistle. For people that really love the game of hurling, yesterday was a victory. And I loved, like, look, they had heroes everywhere. They're athletic, they're rangy, they are good stick men, they have a reliable free taker, they're big, they're physical, they have power. Yeah, look, little first touch here and there, little off. You could see the speed of things. That's because they're playing at a lower level. That will obviously improve in time as well. And we all know the kind of work that's going on the ground. What I'd love to see happen now is the GA to say to themselves, right, we potentially have a test tube case here. We can go in here. Right, there's 100 schools in Kildare. There's 20 DESH schools in Kildare. Go in and say what you need. Give them Hurleys and helmets are 2 of the biggest stumbling blocks. I see it myself on the ground because they're expensive. A Hurley now is about 45, 50 euro. A helmet is about 50 euro, right? Go in and give them free Hurleys and helmets. Go into the schools, say to the schools and the GPOs, right, we're going to give you 50 Hurleys, 50 helmets, just have the kids playing once a week. Put Hurleys and helmets into their hands. Remove the barriers, back them to try and get up to the next level. The chances are they may flip-flop again. They may yo-yo a small bit. They may drop back down. That's okay. It will happen. This isn't going to be, all of a sudden they're going to be up there competing with Limerick and Kilkenny. That's not going to happen straight away. But it could happen if the right planning and the right vision and the right leadership is shown, and get in behind them and support them.
Yeah, I agree.
Jacqui, one thing just before we finish off, Jacqui.
Yeah, go Barry.
To take over from a keeper like Enda Rowland, who was obviously, phenomenal keeper in all aspects. But the save that the Leach keeper made, the double save, I actually thought first that he just I actually thought initially he just threw his Hurley out in the general direction.
It's incredible.
But in actual fact, he actually stopped it with the boss of the Hurley. It was like he actually knew what he was doing. It was one of the greatest, and we've seen the standard of keeping over the last 25 years has been off the scale in the GAA. Like, it's just been, you name 10 keepers who were just incredible keepers. But that double save, the second part of that save yesterday was just the skill level involved, the hand-eye coordination, everything about it was just, I think the Kildare lad couldn't believe he hadn't scored. But it was a fantastic save.
Yeah, top drawer from Carl, top drawer from Kildare. Definitely the story of the year. And it's not over because Shane is right. They play again next weekend. Let's see what happens. You never know. Newbridge or nowhere or anything. Who knows? But lads, look, thoroughly entertaining morning. Thanks so much for being with us, Barry and Shane. We'll be back a little bit later in the week because we've got those round-robin football matches to look forward to on Thursday. So myself and Rory will talk to you then. Don't forget to like and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll talk to you soon.
Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.